Hey everybody, it's Tad Hargrave from Marketing for Hippies, and I'm here with the lovely Maruxa Murphy, who is in Austin, Texas, while I'm here in Edmonton, Alberta, and we are talking about niching. As I lead up to my Niching for Hippies program, I'm interviewing a bunch of my colleagues to get their best sense of niche marketing, and so Maruxa, welcome. Good to have you.
Nice to be here, Tad. Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm curious. Wonder if maybe we can start with you just giving a little introduction about yourself, what you do. What's your deal?
Sure. Well, I am a business owner, have been running businesses since 2005. Some very successful, some very not successful. um, and a lot of it has to do with this topic, niching. Um, I'm a mom. I have this really great husband as well, kind of crazy guy, and we just love to love life. We've built our businesses really around our values and our goals. My main website is captivateyourclients.com, and I don't know what you really want to know about me, but that's a little bit.
Perfect. All right. So before the conversation, I'd sent you some questions and you'd sent some answers. And one of the questions I'd asked was, what do you feel like is most missing in the conversation around niching? And I liked your answer. You were talking about how a lot of people basically just go for the money. They go for what they see as profitable. Um, and I'm just curious if you could say more. Sorry, that's my dryer. I'm wondering if you could just say more about that and what your experience has been with seeing people do that, or what's happened, and what your philosophy is around that.
Yes, thanks. Yeah. So I've made this mistake in my life, and that's why I kind of know it. And actually, I know you and I've had some really fun conversations around this to kind of like dig deep into that at certain points over the last like 4 years since we've known each other. But I think one of the things that really gets people stuck in this idea of niching or niching in here in the U.S., right, is they go for niches that make so much money. Like they seem like jazzy and like jewelry, if you will. And it seems like, oh, I should go into that niche because, so and so made whatever amount of money into that. So that's the initial driver for why people go into those niches. But what happens is, and this is, like I said, this is from personal experience, and I've now worked with hundreds of others who also have been in the same place. You go after those niches, but then your heart's not into it. You're not passionate about it. You're not really like, you don't come alive. And the energy that you put into that niche, I mean, you could be spending that same energy doing something you are passionate about. You're serving people you love to work with. And because of that, the results aren't there. It doesn't matter that so and so made $100,000 last month or whatever in that niche. If you're not passionate about it, if you're going after the money, people will feel it. The way you talk about things when you are trying to sell or promote things or share things within that niche just fall flat most often.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that impact of it when, because there's certainly, when people go after it for the money, they tend to lose motivation, or even if they push themselves, it's not, um, it's kind of a burnout thing. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that you're right. It's also true that people can feel it when somebody is coming from a place of wanting to sound sincere, but really it's just
Yeah.
about the money. um, yeah, I definitely feel like I've been on the receiving end of it of like, oh, everything seems to line up, but it doesn't feel right. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm curious. Do you have any examples of like the going for the money, or what that looks like, or how that happens?
Yeah, totally. So, for example, my husband and I'll put myself on the hot seat here.
Right.
Um, we tried to go into this one niche that we have some friends who are in this particular niche. Seems really fascinating, but I wasn't into it, honestly. Um, it's the survival niche. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, right? It's a niche of folks that, well, It's a huge niche in essence. So you go more sub niche, but the one that we were going to go into more was like, if there ever is like a world disaster, how are you going to survive? How are you going to take care of yourself and like thrive? You know, if there's like no electricity and there's no power or electricity power, you know what I mean? No water, no nothing. So how are you going to do that? And we have a lot of friends that are making a lot of money in that space. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna jump in. Let's try this. And I'll be honest, like I couldn't sit still. Like I was just bored. I mean, I was just like, okay, what else can I do in something, in one of our other things that we do, and I couldn't really grasp being around that space. It just wasn't me. I don't really know much about that space, so I had to do a lot of research ahead of time, and in the midst of, and yet it still wasn't something that I was like, yeah. I mean, it's important, right? If that ever happens, you want to be prepared, but it just wasn't me. So I was really feeling it throughout throughout our launch of our product in that space. And honestly, so did everyone else. As I mentioned, we didn't make a lot of sales, and then I finally confessed. I fessed up to Dennis, my husband, and I was like, dude, kind of just not into it. And he goes, I think I'm not either. So
Wow.
we kind of decided, before we like stepped in any further and really invested our time and our energy in that space, like to just not do it. It's not worth it.
No, because some people, I know I've heard of some people going to workshops of colleagues of ours where the sort of coaches will push them to find a niche that's more profitable in the beginning so that then they can make the money so they can be like freed up to do the thing that they're more excited about.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a balance of, there are some niches where it's like there isn't any money. You start a nonprofit with that and it'll
Right.
be great as a nonprofit, but it's not going to be a business. So it seems like there are these two extremes of like niches that will never ever make money and aren't supposed to be that, and then ones that are just cynically all about making the money. And I'm just curious what your relationship is to that, or what your sense of that is.
That's a really, really good question, and one that I honestly have struggled with since I've been a business owner. My background is in nonprofit work. I worked. The work I did outside of my own businesses was very much community organizing in Florida, in Orlando, and so for me, like being heart-centered and being totally connected to my why and to my values in my work is always paramount to anything I do, right? So if someone asked me to go into something that was illegal or just totally against my values and morals, but it made a lot of money, I would never do it. There's just no way, At the same time, what I've learned is that, unfortunately, the way our society is designed, at least here in the United States, because that's what I can speak of in my experience, is that those that want to be of good service to the world, often, not always, but oftentimes are the ones paid the least. For example, when I got my master's in counseling, I was so excited. I wanted to go out and really serve the world in a powerful way. Start a marriage and family practice and work with families to really create some wholeness in them. That is one of my passions. Then I saw what jobs were going for in that niche, or in that space. $18,000, Tad. That wasn't even like gonna afford me rent anywhere. Like it was like nothing. So, and nothing against people who believe in that and want to do that at all. I just was trying to figure out, like, to live a life that I want to live, that doesn't burn me out, to do things with my family, the people that I love the most. What do I need to do to bring both of those together? And so where on that spectrum I lie, I probably lie like maybe 2/3 of the way in the heart-centered space. But there also has to be ways in which you can provide for yourself or for those that you want to provide for, whatever that looks like. So for me, what that means is, I've started, like, I call them mini businesses that are not all heart-centered, heart-passionate, but I have some interest in them, So when I was first starting out, one of the businesses that I created was a scrapbooking-based business. And it was really geared towards grandparents. I would go and I would sit with grandparents who had huge boxes full of videos and photographs and all this fun stuff, right? And because I love stories, I wanted to go through those pictures with them, hear the stories. I would record it on one of those mini recorders, and they would share their stories with me. Then I would bring those stories to life with their own words in their books, and stuff like that. That was a niche that I jumped into that really, grandmothers, just like most people that want to build community, they talk. So my business really picked up fast. They talked to each other and said, look at what Maruxa was able to do for me. So that like a passion of mine? Scrapbooking, I like doing. It's a hobby, but it's not a passion. But I jumped into it because I saw there was an opportunity to serve someone in a great way.
It is interesting because it does lift up this question around niching where I was talking, Mark Silver?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had an interesting conversation. And one of his points was that people get life purpose confused with niche, and that his feeling is sort of from the Sufi tradition that our only purpose in life is to keep opening our hearts and to each other and being more present. And then it's like, and then we have businesses that are like aligned with our interests and our passions, and I think it's funny. It's like it is a liberating idea in a way that not every business we do has to be meet all of our needs,
right,
and be the thing that is going to like fulfill us ultimately for life. And just like one person in a romantic relationship may not fulfill us in every possible way. That's why we also have friends and other family, and we have other hobbies and things that also sustain us.
Yeah.
And so it really has struck me that it's like the idea of a business that is going to be the be-all and end-all. Though, while it's great to think about how do we create a business where the most of us possible can show up and where we're not hiding ourselves and where that can be as fulfilling as possible, there is also something liberating in the idea that a business can be not the be-all and end-all of everything that fulfills us. It doesn't have to meet every single need of ours. It can be something that we're fascinated by, we're interested in.
Yeah.
And we can do these small things where, build something small, and it helps sustain us. Where even though it's not our 100% life purpose, that's okay. Yeah. Just like, it's so funny because I know some of our colleagues will be like, sort of make fun of people who have jobs. Like job just stands for just over broke, and job is a terrible thing. You want to get out of your job. And I found a number of my clients and people I, talk to I've found some people, even some of our colleagues, some of them like want to go back to having a job.
Yeah.
And it's like, have a steady job part-time and then build the business on the side.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with that. Even though the job may not be like the most fulfilling thing in the world, it might be steady, stable, and then we can start building something else,
exactly.
as we go.
And I'll be honest with you, I think that whenever I've jumped in wholehearted, trying to create businesses, because I've done that too. I'm that person who am such an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs. So I'm a super feeler, and everything internalizes. And so I've been in that space of like, oh my gosh, I need to create a business that's so me, all like encompassing, so I can serve people in the best possible way. But one of the best lessons I learned was how hard that was to actually get it off the ground. Because, creating a business is probably one of the largest, most, not largest, well, yeah, it is one of the largest opportunities for personal growth and personal development, is creating a business, And whenever I try to like build that business, and I still have yet to build that business, to be honest with you, is I get stuck because I face my own fears. So if you're in that process of wanting to build out that beautiful, amazing business that's fully you and full of life in the way in which you want, feel free to do it, because I believe that there could be some fun in that and some joy.
Yeah. But
what I've found is that when I can separate myself from my business in such a way that I'm still doing something that's a hobby or an interest of mine, I'm able to use my business mind a little bit better than I am in that other business that I've always fantasized about creating.
That's really
Does that make sense?
Totally, yeah, yeah. Well, and it is interesting too because when we talk about niching, there are three things that came to me a while ago, and I haven't done a lot of writing about this, but this idea that for our niche, the tone of it, I think, gets really shaped by who we are and our nature. You know, some of us are extroverts, some of us are introverts, some of us are all rock and roll, some of us are more bookish. You know, we all have a kind of vibe to us, and I think that really shapes the tone of our niche and our business. And then our gifts, really, like what we're good at, really determine the form of the business. So if somebody's great at public speaking, that may be the way that they show up in their gifts, or they're good at one-on-one conversations, or they're good at hosting things, they're good at writing. That may affect the form their business takes based on what they're good at. And then, but the direction of it often gets shaped by our wounds, the things that we've struggled with the most and had to overcome. Even just before the call, I know you were talking about how you spend all these years building your business in a certain way and traveling, and you know, and then realizing, oh, that's not what I want to do. I want to build it in a different way. And from that place, wanting to help other people build the business in that way because you'd been through it. And for me, having done a lot of really aggressive, pushy sales stuff when I was younger, and then having to unpack that, and now having something to offer in terms of how to do this in a more authentic way, so that the places we've struggled affect the direction of it.
Right.
But all three of those are really deep things. You know, like I remember talking with this one woman, and she was, we had a phone call scheduled, and I hadn't given her the number, and so it was like 5 minutes before, and I was planning to call her. I had her number, but she just was emailing me and was getting really antsy, and so I finally called her, and she was already a little bit in the beginning, and then her phone starts dying, and so she's like, so she's like, I really want to keep it. So she called me back from a payphone outside of her place. And so she's just, you know, and finally I was like, and it was interesting, as we were talking, I'm looking at her website, which is all these like waterfalls. She's a hypnotherapist. All these waterfalls and blue and peaceful, la la la. And then it's like, I'm hearing her on the phone being extremely feisty, and her photo on the website has this real feisty, kind of like sexy energy to it. And I was like, I just gotta pause our conversation, like, 'cause this is what I'm noticing.
Yeah.
And then she suddenly got so shy, and she was like, I am really feisty, but it's always gotten me into trouble. And I was like, and her thing was like all about helping people relax, and I'm like, I want to see you helping women be more feisty.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I want to see you do, because I feel like you've got that. A lot of women could probably use that. They probably have a hard time setting boundaries, saying no. I get the sense you don't. But it was like, that was a part of her that she was so ashamed of. And so to be like, yeah, build your business around that. Like, I put that out. I was like, that's the thing. And she was like, that's probably going to take me a few years to, like, get to a place where I'm okay with that part, you know, my nature as being a feisty, passionate person.
Yeah.
And same with wounds. You know, if you've struggled with something, it's not like it can be a very healing process to go through it, but it's not always overnight. And our gifts, sometimes, you know, it's like we can be ashamed of those things that we're good at, or it can take us a while to see it and find it.
Yeah.
And when we can bring them all together, I think that's a liberating experience too, because, you know, as much as it's liberating to just work a job sometimes and let go of all that, you know, pressure, it can be so liberating too to find the thing that is like, this brings together so much of my life.
Yeah.
But I think it can just take time.
Yeah, totally. I hear you. I mean, I can hear in that story of that particular woman how hard it is, because we're not just, you know, one-dimensional. You know, I think when it comes to business and creating a niche for ourselves and allowing our voice to shine and allowing our wounds to be a part of how we share that message, I think we kind of we make it like we try to check off the boxes, right? Or like we decide that it's almost like paint by number or color by number picture. Like if we color the ones with just blue and then the greens, all of a sudden the picture will be there.
Right.
But like you said, it is deeper. You know, I think maybe there's some teal in that, or a mixture, like a cerulean. Never say that word. But you know what I'm saying. You know, the colors are not always as simple as the primary colors.
Totally.
And I think that we want the easy, but really, if we were wanting the easy, like if our deepest desire was the easy, it would be boring, right?
Right.
And that's what makes each of us so fascinating, and allows for this adventure of creating your niche in such a way that just helps you thrive even better. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, it's there is that design. People will come to me around niche questions and be like, yeah, and just want the easy answer. And it's funny because I've actually been thinking about it. Like I've got this kind of 4-step process that I take people through, but I've realized how it's more of a cycle or like an upward spiral. It's like, first there's just this question generally, who do you want to work with? What are the general qualities of the people you want to work with?
Yeah.
Then second, there's this question about who are you, and all your gifts, your wounds, and your nature and all that. And then there's this question of what are the specific groups of people, maybe 3 that you might want to focus on, and then trying a small niche project. Number 4 that you can experiment with. But what I've really seen is how, because it's for all of our colleagues. I mean, I've seen their niches change a number of times. I've seen, the people who teach this stuff are also changing, and so that it's like that by the time you get to doing a project and you go out and you test it, you're going to get feedback of people who like it, don't like it. You're going to notice if you like it, you don't like it, and that gives you feedback for back to the big circle of like generally who do you want to work with, which will probably change, and what do you want to do, et cetera, et cetera.
Totally agree.
And well, you said, you go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say along that note, I don't think there's any problem with step by step, from the perspective of allow it to be a guide to get you to the next place, but make it a free flow. Allow it to flow instead of feeling like you have to be boxed in. I think my biggest pet peeve in business is thinking in the box. If we allow ourselves to be out of the box and see where it comes up, make business an adventure as if we would do anything else. It makes it fun. It makes it a lot more fun than trying to just check all the boxes off and say, oh, I did it. Now I'm stuck with this niche. I hope no one ever feels stuck,
And it is interesting, too, because I feel like that attitude of curiosity and experimentation is actually part of what can help create a really interesting niche. Like, I started doing pay what you can for my weekend workshops. Like 10 years ago, and that's how I've done it ever since. And that was just an experiment out of desperation at the time, because I was in Iowa and nobody had signed up for my weekend workshop, so I was just like, just come and pay me whatever you want at the end, because I'm here. And I had like 12 people come, and it went really well, and I tried it again in Halifax, and I just kind of stuck with it. But then I became known for that, and that became part of my reputation. Because I tried something new. I did an experiment. And I just feel like it's so important for people to trust their own aesthetics, their own taste, their own judgment, their own what they want, what they don't want. Because when people trust that and they create something, they're going to attract a certain kind of people who are into that, who resonate with that. So,
yeah, totally agree with you. Yeah, that's how I met you. I met you on, I think you were talking about the pay what you can model. Andrea Lee's event a few years ago.
Oh my gosh, wow, time
and I was so mesmerized with the idea, and I was like, dude, I need to talk to him. I need to get to know him.
Right, and so, so it's just that somehow I just feel like that it fits into the whole niching conversation, because niching isn't just about, if like niche is our place in the world, it's not just who we're going after. It's, though that ends up sort of being the thing that we have to come back to. It's also this question of like, what do you want to give to the world?
Yeah.
How do you want to be showing up? And that just seems to play a really important role. One of the things you'd said in your answers was, I'd asked, what do you feel like is one of the biggest distractions around niching? And you'd said, focusing just on the stuff that's going to make money without a consideration of what your community is wanting to learn from you. And I'm just curious if you can speak more to that.
Okay. So we already talked about the money part. I think at the same time, once you really get clear on who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, I think what's super important, obviously, is to hear from them what they're looking for. Um, and I've done this many times. I do this often, actually. I connect up with my community and I say, hey, where are you right now? Like, how can I best serve you? My community are primarily coaches.
Yeah.
And some small business owners too, in another section of my community. And so I asked them, and I remember a couple years ago, my small business community was really interested in mobile marketing.
Yeah.
And understanding mobile. Well, I just happened to have been on the back end testing out some mobile strategies, and I was doing it because I'm kind of a nerd, right? And I like to study things and then test it out, kind of mad scientist-y like that. And but I didn't know that's what they were interested in. It was like the hot topic of those few months or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, would you want me to teach you what I've learned? And they're like, yeah, totally. So so I started teaching my small business folks about what I was learning with mobile and all this stuff. And in that, I started to have these sparks, these like ideas, like, oh my gosh, coaches could totally use this too, and we can create information-based products through mobile marketing. Right. But it was almost like, wait, what's mobile marketing for that particular niche? So I had to first connect up with that niche and ask them, do you want to learn mobile? Is this something that you're actually potentially interested in? And they were like, yeah, but we want to know the basics. So in that, I started sharing the basics of mobile marketing, and that led to other opportunities to coach and help some of those clients in the coaching space learn how to use mobile marketing in their business. So that's just one simple example.
It's interesting because this is something I've been talking about more and more, and I've heard so many of my colleagues talk about, is have a conversation with your people about what they want. And I'm curious, what forms have you found work best for the conversation? Like, do you create, a Survey Monkey thing? Do you send out an email, just ask for an opinion on a blog post? Like, how do you talk to people one-on-one, all of it? What do you find works?
The best way for me has been one-on-one conversations, for sure. Or if I'm like at a conference or something, just asking my colleagues for their opinion on this or that or the other. And that's worked really, really well. The way I get conversations, if I'm not at a conference or when I don't know very many people in a niche that I was interested in kind of jumping into. So like, for example, in the coaching space, before I got into the coaching space, I didn't know very many people, but I was doing coaching myself. So what I did in that scenario is I connected up with some of my some colleagues that I got to know, other coaches, and kind of did like a beta focus group, if you will, and just asked questions. So got on the phone, like all of us got on a conference line, and I said, hey, what are your questions about this? And I do that periodically still. I have now I have a core group of coaches that I confide in, and I just say, so what are your thoughts? And be honest with me. What questions would you have, etc. And we record all of that information, and then I go back through that recording, and then I'll take notes. Say, okay, here are the biggest questions. Okay, great. Now I can create a product from that. Or service.
It's so much easier to do that than to fly blind and to not know, There's a story about Disney with their hotels where they would wash the sheets every night.
Huh.
And then one of their people was like, we spend so much money on water, there's the environmental impact of these detergents and all this. And they're like, why don't we just ask them if they want their So they had a thing where it's like, we do our sheets every 3 nights or something. If you want them washed more often, let us know. Yeah. And nobody let them know. Everyone was fine with it. Nobody cared. Nobody actually really wanted but they were putting so much effort. And so to think of the money, the water, everything that was saved by just asking, or British Airways had one where in their first class, that people can stretch out and sleep, and they asked us what's most important? What do you most want from us? And the overwhelming answer was just let us sleep. So they're trying to work real hard to please people, wake them up, and do you want this? Do you want that? And they're just like, wow, just leave me alone. That's the
You're
best
actually
thing
making it worse by making me up. Thanks. Yeah.
So it's like asking, what do you want? How do you want it? They tell you. it's
Yeah.
often easier than we think it would be, and at least it's clear and gives us direction.
Yeah.
Now, before we talk, I'd asked for what are 3 examples of niches that you think work well or good niche business examples, and so I'd love to go over them and just have you share briefly why do you think that's such a good case study. So
Okay.
the first one is scraphappy.org.
Okay. So Scrap Happy is a site that my friend Lane Amon started. She and I, we have a long history of being friends and knowing each other. She's part of my kind of core group of folks. What I love about her is she took that dare to go niche. When I first met her, she was a scrapbooker. We had that in common, and but everyone told her that she should, or she thought that maybe she had to go into a more broad market, or into just like a market that maybe she has one identity of, instead of scrapbooking, because she thought there's no money there. That's what everyone said. There's no money there, whatever. It's amazing to see what she's done, to be really honest with you. She has a 6-figure business, just doing virtual scrapbooking parties. That's how she got started. Isn't that cool? Like, amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I said her, because she knows her community. She speaks to them. She has such a great relationship with them, and they love her.
Wow. And what about smartpassiveincome.com?
I like his site because, again, he's speaking to his people. I think that's core when you're finding your niche, is to speak to your people. And I personally look at his site because I want to create multiple. I have created multiple revenue streams in my business, and to make that as part of our family, our goal. It's a personal goal to have more passive income. But he speaks to me. When I look at his stuff, I feel like he's talking exactly to me, and I can connect up with what he's saying. And that's what we want to do when we are choosing a niche. Is who can we actually speak to? Who do we like to speak to? Who do we want to serve?
Yeah. And what about She Shines Wellness?
Okay. So she's one of my clients, and she actually had a really tough time as well figuring out. She was scared at first, to go niche. And she created a community. Oh, and she's actually a really good example of someone that's gone into niches that don't make any money, and then said, "What am I doing? I'm burnt out. I want to serve them with my passion in this space, but I'm burnt out and they're not making." So in that process, she decided. We looked at other areas of her passion and other things that she really loved to do. And she realized she loves green smoothies, like that's her thing, and essential oils to heal. And so she created this community specifically for women who want to have that radiance within them, shining through. And so she does it from a spiritual, food and essential oils perspective, and it's just awesome. And so I think she's a really great example of someone having been in a niche that just didn't make money. Her energy wasn't in there, what we were talking about right at the beginning. No. To now someone who is being asked to be on radio shows all the time, has a huge cohort of folks in 3 of the metropolitan areas here in Texas, and is really growing. And it's like a snowball effect that's happening right now for her.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. And the last one was... you'd said that there were 3 questions that were probably most effective for finding your niche. That, like if you were working with somebody, the questions you'd ask them. So the first one was, maybe I'll go over them, and if you want to say anything about them. The first one was, what are your key interests, gifts, or hobbies? Second one was, what do people pay for based on your interests, gifts, and hobbies? And third was, with whom do you feel yourself? And so I'm wondering if you can just share where those come from or your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think that's a really good summary of what we talked about today. You now know like my like going deeper into each of those, and how I feel about that. But really, I think if you and I love that thank you for sharing your 4 steps too, Tad, because it really is in alignment with that. And really, I think if we look at it, if we look at our businesses and the opportunities that we have to serve people in a specific niche, by answering those by first answering those questions, we do it from a space of flow and ease instead of just trying to fit inside that one little box. We really can find businesses that we feel good about, that make us money, and that we can serve people that we want to serve, not the whole world.
I love it. It's funny. This conversation is just like, because it's been coming up so much, it's having me feel like I actually need to add an extra step into that 4-step process, because I think something that's been keeps coming back to me through all these conversations is how I really feel like so much of this starts with what do we have that we want to offer or that we want to give.
Yeah.
It starts with us, and that so much of the niching conversation ends up being like, who's your target market? Who do you want to reach? But I feel like we really need to start with that question of, what are our interests, our gifts, our passions? My colleague Javin Bernakovich, friend of mine, Victoria, does permaculture stuff. And he helps people. One of the things he's gotten really good at in his courses is helping people who are in permaculture figure out a niche for themselves, because what almost everyone ends up doing is just teaching more workshops about permaculture. And
sure.
There's the old joke, how many permaculturists does it take to change a light bulb? 14 want to change the light bulb, 13 to teach a workshop about it. And but he's gotten really good at it. And one of the questions he asks is like, okay, so you learned a lot in this 14-day permaculture certification.
Yeah.
Out of everything you learned, what was it the most excited you? What lit you up? And so I can see a similar thing for coaches. Through all the stuff you learned in the coaching certificate, what's the material that you most resonate with, that really lights you up the most?
Yeah.
So that is a question. And then it's like, is there a way you imagine doing that? Is there, do you want to travel around? Do you want to do it on the phone? All of that kind of stuff. And then once we have that, I feel like then it's like, okay, now generally, what are the kind of people you want to work with? Who are the people you feel most yourself with? And who people who fascinate you, who you want to be around more? And then where is that overlap between this thing you want to give and the world?
Right, exactly. And don't feel bad if not everything aligns, right? So in the first phase of your business, or whatever phase you're in, if it's not all in alignment, not all the boxes are even. As okay, I get to do this, and this, and this, and this. All those answers to the questions in my business. It's okay. Give yourself permission. Be kind to yourself, and say, that's where it is right now, but I'm looking for opportunities to create what I really envision in the future.
That feels really important. The 7th generation cleaning products. They one of the things I really respect about them is they're very open that they're actually not a totally eco-sustainable business.
Yeah.
They still use some chemicals because their products have to work, but they're very open about that. They're very transparent.
Yeah.
This is not 100% where we want to be, and we're working on it. We're getting better every year. So people are real forgiving with that. And, okay, you're not totally there, but you're making progress. And I feel like we can be that kind to ourselves. Like, okay, this business isn't 100% in alignment, but over time it may become more in alignment, or I may come up with some other business.
Exactly.
But it doesn't have to be, it's like not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, we don't want to forget about what's most important to us. Is it really to serve the people that we want to serve, or to be perfect? Really.
I love that. It's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Well, this was so wonderful. It was really great to chat with you.
Me too, Dad.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll be in touch down the road. Now, if people want to work with you or explore, your services more, where should they go?
Yeah, so definitely check out captivateyourclients.com. And that's really where I spend a lot of my time sharing. I do a lot of case studies on what's working through a web TV show there called Captivate Your Clients Show. So original. Woohoo, creative. But anyway, I share a lot of case studies of people finding ways to engage better with their community. That's something I'm really passionate about, is how do you engage? How do you be fully you in the work that you do from an engagement perspective? How do you show up in the best way? So I ask people, how does that happen? And how does that increase your sales? How does it increase your list size or whatever, community size, and how does that support them in feeling more alive in their work. So yeah, definitely check that out. And I, as I shared with you earlier, I have a new venture. I'm kind of a nut, right? I don't know how the reason I do it is because I have support around me, but my latest venture is writing children's books. And so I've been having a blast doing that, Tad. And you can check them out at kidsbooksonly.com.
Awesome.
And I also share other really great children's books from other awesome authors on that site. So if you have kids or you have little people that you love or you like to read kids' books, it's a good place to go.
Cool. Awesome. Well, really wonderful chatting with you. And yeah, I've got to run, but we will catch up another time.
Okay, sounds great.